Hello, we're excited to have you join us today at FedTalks. I'm Dave Nyczepir, and I'm a tech reporter at FedScoop. Joining me today are Keith Nakasone, Deputy Assistant Commissioner for Acquisition in the Office of IT category, and Ryan Day, Director of the Digital Services Division, both within the General Services Administration. GSA has spent much of 2020 expanding the impact of AI on the federal government this year. A key part of that effort is assisting agencies with the acquisition of innovative technologies. To that end, I was hoping you could start out by explaining the Enterprise User Licensing Agreement and how it leverages AI. Keith.
Great, thanks for having us. To start, an end user license agreement, what we call EULAs, details the rights and the restrictions which apply to the use of software or services. It can be also known as software licensing agreements or acceptable use policy. As part of the acquisition process of software or services, GSA reviews the associated EULAs. This review must be completed and approved prior to awarding new contracts or modifying existing contracts. As a GSA contracting officer reviews the applicable EULAs for terms and conditions that are not in accordance with the federal law and regulations. The CO may also coordinate a legal review with the Office of General Counsel if they feel it is warranted. Should EULAs contain language that would conflict with federal law and regulations, the CO will negotiate changes to the EULA to remove the problematic language. On average, it takes all parties involved approximately 7 to 14 days to review a EULA and ensure that all unacceptable terms and conditions are identified. We targeted this as a candidate to apply AI or machine learning to this manual process, and we organized an online challenge on the challenge.gov platform to get solutions from the public. And that's the way we started this effort to ensure that we wanted to test and actually see the commercial practices that was available to take on this effort.
Now, Ryan, I was curious to get your take on what were some of the things GSA learned from industry during that process and themes it maybe hadn't considered before that it's considering now.
Yeah, thanks. The first thing we learned was that industry could actually do this. Our use case going in, we didn't have any assumptions whether or not that it could be done with machine learning or not, but we found that it was a good fit. As we organized the challenge, one of the possible outcomes we thought of might be that nobody would submit a solution, or maybe we'd have a few solutions, but they wouldn't be of very high quality. But in the end, for this challenge, we got 20 solutions that were submitted, some of them very detailed, very high quality. And so that was really validating. And then in the deep dive, one of the interesting things about this use case is that we don't have very much training data. So a lot of times in machine learning, supervised machine learning, you want to have large amounts of data. We only had, really thousands of rows of training data. So we asked teams to see what kind of creative solutions that they could do to solve this. In particular, looking at transfer learning or other techniques like this. And what was really interesting is we found that there's been several advances, even in the last couple of years, in natural language processing that directly address dealing with limited training data. And specifically what we found is there's very powerful pre-trained machine learning models that are being provided, open source that people are using in the industry, that allows you to take, the power of a model from this pre-training on vast amounts of other data, and then only having to fine tune it for your individual data. And so in our challenge, when we went through those 20 solutions, we found it was very prevalent. Many of those teams were using a pre-trained model called BERT, or one of the variations off of BERT, that's B-E-R-T. And that was a very technique that we saw over and over again that allowed them to deal with that problem of limited training data. And that was really eye-opening for us. And really, as it relates to crowdsourcing challenges like this, it really validated for us, if you want to go to industry and find out what is the state of the art, what is today's latest techniques, as opposed to last year's, this was very powerful to us that we saw that and saw that repeated themes. Then a couple other things, again, with that lack of training data, we saw a couple of creative ways to augment training data and generate new training data. One that we thought was really interesting was one of the teams proposed taking the training in our case, which was a clause or a couple of paragraphs or two, that we're asking them to tell the question, is this acceptable to government or not? Because that's really that binary classification task that we had. Some teams proposed taking those clauses from English, using a cloud translation tool to translate it to possibly hundreds of other languages, and then translate it back into English. And in that, you would come back with another set of those clauses that was not the same as the original, but had the same semantic meaning, maybe different types of syntax, and as a way of generating that one. And the last thing, just quickly we got is that the teams, as they developed their solutions, they used an API-centric approach, meaning in almost every case, the inference engine, the modeling prediction engine, was deployed as an API. That definitely confirmed for us the value, kind of flexibility that API-centric model gives you. So that's it. That's just a couple of them off the top.
Now, what insights can you share into compiling and staging data for AI and ML projects?
Yeah, that was interesting. In data science, they have what you call the 80-20 rule, meaning about 80% of the work of doing a machine learning solution is in the data wrangling, data cleansing, data preparation. And so by doing an end-to-end challenge like this, we really validated that was certainly the case. So, in this challenge, we were playing the part of doing all of that data preparation. And then that last 20%, we were turning over to the solvers to have a solution. And so we found that the process of generating data for this was extremely manual, very time intensive. As we went, we came up with some automation techniques through scripting and things like this that helped us a little bit. But what was really great is the solvers themselves, whenever they submitted their solutions, provided a lot of different techniques for parsing documents from MS Word or a PDF, and then breaking it down into clauses that predictions could be done on. And so all of those techniques that they gave to us in their solutions, we'll be able to use those in the future for our training data preparation.
Keith, what other advice would you give to agencies just beginning AI ML projects when it comes to things like scope creep and explainability?
Thanks for the question. One of the things that we want to focus on from an acquisitions perspective is when we start looking at projects that we have a focus on the desired outputs and outcomes and ensuring that it's well defined. We want to make sure that when we scope the contract requirements, that we definitely focus on what we set out to do, because it's very easy for us to say, oh, what if we did this and what if we did that, and we added additional requirements, and it could complicate the matters when you're pursuing something with this technology and the tool set. So if we create the focus and we create the acquisition to move forward in an agile way, so we can do iterative process in building, we can make go, no-go decisions along the way. So for the example, like the challenge, it really tests the water to say, hey, what is that capability out there in industry? And then we can move into proof of concepts, pilots, and then scale and production, and build the acquisitions accordingly. But really the importance here is to avoid that scope creep, because it could get costly in the long run. But this agile iterative approach, we can phase it in and we can see what works, what doesn't work, and make adjustments accordingly. So definitely when we're taking on emerging technologies, iterative process is the way to go.
Now, do you guys anticipate any challenges like this in the future? How do you build off this?
From the good thing about taking on something like this from a challenge perspective is we can actually see the opportunities that are available. So with all the different sources or the solution sets that came in, we can determine what was the best solution, what worked, what didn't work, and we can actually move some of the things that we learned into actual requirements from a business perspective as well as a technology perspective. perspective. So I think this is a good way to start. The challenge gave us some really good insight into the tools available. I don't know if Ryan wanted to offer a little bit more from the technical perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely hope to do some more. That it's interesting whenever you get solutions like this, the work that they give you gives you a lot of other ideas for things that you'd like to see industry explore. But definitely we've had several of our solvers getting in touch with us even as late as today asking, when's the next one? We want to get in on that. So we just felt really positively about the interaction we had with the solver community through it. So definitely interested in that in the future.
Another subject I wanted to touch on with you two was the idea of ethical AI standards. The Department of Defense, intelligence community, and now Department of Homeland Security are all working on ethical AI standards. I was wondering if we can expect something similar from GSA, or is the agency taking a different approach?
No, absolutely. One of the things that we're doing, GSA has the community of practice, and Steve Babbage leads that effort for us there. But it brings the agencies together so we can learn best practices, we can share information, and also glean what we can do from creating templates and playbooks. So this is a great way for us to move in the future, is leveraging that community of practice, understanding what everybody else is doing from an agency perspective, and from the center of excellence approach, is we can start to build out those proof of concepts, get to minimum viable products and solutions, and then move eventually into product and scale. But one of the things that we also are considering is leveraging commercial off the shelf, and companies that are putting ethical principles out there for us to leverage is also another thing that we can consider from a contract and acquisition perspective. Ryan, did you have anything else to add for that?
Yeah, I think, just to echo what he said, our approach is to be engaged with the rest of government. The communities of practice and centers of excellence that GSA has, I think, is just the best place at this point where government is talking to each other on those. So, we definitely want to be in learning from the others and continue to be part of that conversation.
Now we've covered a lot of ground, but I did want to get maybe your final thoughts on AI at GSA, anything we haven't touched on that you guys really want to get out there.
Just from an emerging technologies perspective, within the IT category perspective, we're definitely are looking at the products and service offerings that are coming out, and from what private industry is building, and we want to incorporate it within our portfolio offerings as well. So as technology progresses, as things start to move into that production and scale perspective, we really want to include it within our portfolio offerings, such as the new contracts that are government-wide contracts that are becoming available. STARS 3, Polaris are just a couple of the large government-wide acquisition contracts that are coming out, and we definitely want to adopt and also profile some of these larger acquisition vehicles to have those emerging technologies available for use as well.
Ryan, I'm going to give you the last word here.
Great. Yeah, I would just say we really look forward to continuing to engage with industry on this one, both to understand what's the state of the art, but also continue to ask them, the tougher questions about ethical AI, trustworthy AI, explainability, so that we can help to guide, this industry as it emerges in ways that help the American people.
Well, I want to thank you both for your time today and for your insights. And I want to thank the audience for tuning into this session. We hope you enjoy the rest of FedTalks.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.